This is crazy. This is actually coming out right now. Long story short, Square Enix Financial was not doing great over the past like year or so. Their last fiscal did not meet expectations on multiple fronts. We learned not even that long ago, several of their titles that were planned for the future got canceled, but they were not like big mainstay titles. For anybody that forgot, Square Enix last year released so many goddamn games that you forgot about 90% of them. So few people even knew of their existence. And I'm not even talking, you knew about Forspoken, bro. You know that Forspoken exists. I'm talking about games like, yeah, Duo Field Chronicle and that Star Ocean game. Babylon Fall and Foam Stars came out, and huge variety of other like wacky AA, like middle of the road budget games. Valkyrie Profile game came out, bro. Some new Saga games also came out, I'm pretty sure. There was so much that it was like, dude, these guys are just sending these games to die. What is happening here? And guess what? They all did. Yes, there was a big problem in terms of just their overall like development resources and strategy that resulted in them losing a shit ton of money, like down like 140, 150 million dollars, which is not good. Do they cancel Final Fantasy VII next? No, not at all, because that's effectively their breadwinner. If they can't get Final Fantasy VII to sell, that is not just the end of, you know, Final Fantasy VII. That is their golden goose. That's not happening, right? Mind you, people will take the doom and gloom route. That's not happening. The next game's happening. It's already budgeted. It's already going to be the same thing it is. Like, the larger games are still relatively unaffected by any of this stuff that's happening right now. However, most of that shit is going to be changing down the road because of the way their releases are going to be changing. And finally, Square Enix, like, woke the hell up. They did the thing they should have done 10 years ago, which is to get rid of exclusivity. Because what has platform exclusivity done for Square Enix? Minimized its audience. It's deeply minimized the amount of people that can play their games and have access to their games, and their games take 5 to 7 years to come out or some shit like that. Now there's just not as many new fans into this shit. Making a lot more sense that console exclusivity for a lot of this shit is one of the bigger things that's affecting them, which is why their main strategy going forward is specifically that. This is dropping right now. Let's just read this shit because this is all from the recent fiscal and financial reports. 16 sales fell short of expectation. Initial momentum fell in line, but the game failed to reach a fiscal year goal with the momentum slowed. No updates from the sales number. Last announced at 3 million. Rebirth sales short of expectation. Initial momentum didn't reach initial target. No sales numbers to share. Foam Stars failed to meet expectations. Remains confident 16 can achieve its goal over the original 18-month plan. Also, sales of Rebirth and Foam Stars aren't necessarily bad, but reorganized development team into 5 console teams, 1 smartphone game team. Okay, so that sounds like kind of what Capcom has done. Has been relying too much on individuals' creativity. Will promote sharing game making know-how among teams that will seek the best balance of individual creativity to organizational discipline. So this is very much in line with the way a lot of larger Japanese game studios work. Bandai Namco, Capcom, and Square Enix. You get these like dev teams that are working on one thing and nobody even communicates to any of the other big dev teams, right? Whether it's like Unit 1, Unit 2, Dev 1, Dev 2, like all these splitting classifications of like, you know, organizations that are within each one of these companies. One learns and what one shares with the other is completely different. So if somebody had already like solved this problem of like, hey, we've fixed how to do this in FF7 Rebirth, you know, you could possibly use that for the next Kingdom Hearts or Final Fantasy or whatever. Nope. Doesn't work that way. That is not the way this shit works. You do not have like active intercommunication between companies. However, that has changed a lot recently with Capcom, which is why the majority of Capcom games are coming online much faster than a lot of their titles did before, where even you can get, you know, the frequency of Capcom games to the level of like, oh yeah, because they also have their own internal engine and yada, yada, yada. What I'm trying to say is that this isn't weird. This is the way that a lot of larger focused Japanese game studios have just run the ship. Then the majority of them have just done it this way. I think Nintendo is also extremely egregious with stuff like this, where it's like, oh yeah, what one side learns compared to the other is not really shared between. They're just doing their own thing, you know? This isn't teamwork, bro. These are thousands of people. This is quite literally the problem with massive game companies, where you're just so big, there's so many moving parts, there's very little relative organization unless you have the people working on the individual projects. It was clear that Final Fantasy 16 had a lot of organization. It took a while to come online, but a lot of organization, because that game, whether you like it or not, was effectively what they wanted to make. And it was like, yeah, I see exactly what they're going for here. Rebirth was the same way, came online super fast. The directors and organization of those projects were damn good. Ultimately, when you have so many projects coming out in like the span of time that they do, now they just come out and nobody knows about them. There's huge fucking problems here, man. DQ12 remains under development. Investors' reaction, sell shares heavily. Oof. Stocks fell the day's trading limit. Concerns our pipelines have become too empty. No big titles that can lift up the company's top line over the next couple of years. Kingdom Hearts 4, well, I think, chat, there's your answer. If your answer is like, what about Kingdom Hearts 4? No big titles that can lift the company's top line over the next couple of years. So it ain't coming out anytime soon. Thank God for Final Fantasy 14. This company has released potentially its greatest game in 20 years. In terms of overall reviews, right? Just in terms of perspective and reviews, they have created one of their most well-received titles, and a game that did not have an absolute cursed development like most of their games released in the past few months, which was FF7 Rebirth. As a game company, what else do you do? Like, they have created what is effectively one of their best games. We have to make it even better? Like, you have to think what's frustrating from their perspective as a developer, like the people internally, where it's like everyone just fired on all fucking cylinders and made a huge amount of people super happy with the release of this, but it just doesn't sell enough. The issue isn't the game development itself. The issue is a lot of other shit, the marketing, the exclusivity, and all that stuff. And it's good that Square realizes this as we get into the next like article talking about their plans for the future. Something needs to change, right? We can't release a Metacritic game that goes 92, 93 and is potential game of the year material, and it isn't hitting its sales expectations. What the fuck is going on? And obviously the big one has been Sony grabbing you by the balls, offering a big paycheck, and then offering you exclusivity. Again, I'm not worried about the budget for the next remake project. I'm not, because they seemingly probably got all of their money from Sony already. The problem with that is that they are quite literally stifling their audience. The PlayStation's doing terrible in Japan. It's doing good overall, but the actual reach and people that are buying games on PS5 is staggeringly low. Like way more than any other console. That's called an attach rate, where you have folks that are buying games for your system, right? And the amount of people that are buying games for their PS5 is significantly less than it was the PS4, significantly less than it was the PS3. Games are number one. The economy's different. Games are expensive. A lot of shit has changed since the pandemic and over the past like 5 to 6 years. There needs to be an adjustment to this shit. So new midterm or medium term plan. Enhance productivity by optimizing the development footprint in the digital entertainment segment. So, you know, just overall digital game sales, not really relying on physical, I'm assuming is what that means. Diversify earnings opportunities by strengthening consumer contact points, roll out initiatives to create additional foundational stability, strike a balance between shareholder return and growth investment when allocating capital. These are all very fun things to hear, chat. The initiative, focus on development titles, delivering fun that only the group can create and build the development structure. Well, here's the big one. Shift to a multi-platform strategy, building continuous customer contact points of our titles by stepping up digital sales. Create the interaction with customers by increasing sophistication of publishing function, generating the opportunity of new revenue by offering IP across a range of entertainment experiences. So this is a lot of fluff work for saying us taking the Sony check is not working out. Over this period of time, them being effectively beholden to Sony has not net them returns in the long run, which is why Square Enix was doing so good in those what was it, the mid 2010s, like after the Tomb Raider era, right before the fucking Avengers shit. They were doing like relatively decent, you know? Overall, that strategy wasn't exactly sound. It looked really good at the time, and big surprise, the industry has just changed a lot, right? The industry and how people consume the entire medium has looked very different. They're effectively saying that we cannot do this anymore, or we are only on one specific platform. And I'm hoping that obviously means that the Epic Game Store deals are going to go away. The PlayStation deals are going to go away. Let's read a little bit into it to see if we can find out what exactly is going on. The one thing I really hope for all of this shit is obviously like next Nintendo title. And when we read through all of this stuff, you start reading stuff of they don't mention what the next Nintendo system is. You can't look at a place like, and the next Nintendo system is 95% going to be a handheld again. There's no reason why it wouldn't be. You have to be looking at the potential sales of that platform or whatever next platform it's going to be. and being like, okay, I think the hope is that you're going to have a scalable platform that can do effectively what the other systems do, but just scale it down. If it runs at 720p, who gives a shit, you know? But that shit is going to be really important. This has already happened to several other titles in the fighting game space that I've deeply followed, and have allowed those games to soar to lengths that the initial sales expectations could not have expected. The ports were decent, and that was Dragon Ball FighterZ and Mortal Kombat 11. Not many other fighting games have managed to make its way to the Switch, but those games did, and those games on Switch were a dramatic impact in the overall sales of those titles. MK11 was sold a lot on Switch. It wasn't the best-selling console, but we're talking like a 15 to 20% install rate. And the same thing for Dragon Ball FighterZ. It sold pretty damn good on the Switch. And by the time a lot of these new big games from Square Enix eventually come out, there is going to be a new Nintendo system. Here's the thing that I am already going to be making an assumption about. The release windows for these games is going to be later now. I don't think we're getting FF7 Remake Part 3 in the same 3-year-ish time span that we were expecting. I don't think that's going to happen. And the reason that isn't happening is because its primary console of development is obviously PlayStation. It's going to remain that way, and then they effectively have to port it to the other systems as well as PC. Do I think it's going to be an astronomical amount of dev time? But I'm thinking, you know, obviously 6 months to a year could have an impact in that way. Yeah, I don't know at this point if FF7 being on Xbox would do much, but I think it's painfully clear FF7 Trilogy, all being on Steam and being on a new Nintendo console, will do a lot. That'll be big.